So I'm going to demonstrate two ways to do images in Rails. One, just the really simple way that I've showed just really quickly in the past before, and then one, a more full-featured way using a gem. And I'm using the same project that I used to demo ActiveAdmin, and so I've got it running, and I'm going to log in. Password is the password. And so in ActiveAdmin, I have this dashboard, and I have categories, and I have board games, and the idea here is that I want to attach an image optional image to each board game. And so currently, there's no property of a board game to allow me to do that. So the first thing I need to do is to create a new column in the board games table so that I will have an image property for board games, so that when I go to new or edit, I will have somewhere to store some information about an image. And so that I will do using a migration. And so I will do, or no, sorry, using a generator. Yeah, so the generator is the migration generator. And what I want to do is I want to add an image to board games. And so this is the name of the migration, but if I name it in this very specific manner, add X to Y, where X is the name of the column I wish to add and Y is the name of the table that I wish to add to, Rails is going to write the migration for me. If I didn't write it in this special way, I could just write the migration, and when we look at the migration, we'll see that it's not really that difficult if we had to write it ourselves. But if Rails is going to write some code for us, we might as well allow it to. So add image to board games, and then I need to tell one other bit of information, which is the data type for the column. So the image column that I'm adding is :string. And so I'll click OK on that. And if we were to look in the DB migrate folder, we would see this new add image to board games. And there it is. It, as you can see, it's not very long, right? So I could have written this myself. The class is named add image to board games, so that same add X to Y. It inherits from active record migration. It has a single change method inside of it that simply adds a column to board games, named image of type string. So we could have written that. We could have just done Rails generate migration, given a name, and written that out ourselves. But we have that little tool to do a little bit of extra building for us. And now I'm going to run the DB migrate task to bring that into existence. And if I look in my app admins folder, or admin folder, we'll remember that I had a place where I needed to whitelist the parameters that ActiveAdmin would allow a user to manipulate. So when I open up my board games admin file, I'm permitting params on name, rating, and category ID. I have to add image to that list. Otherwise, I would not be able to change that from ActiveAdmin. So I need to restart my server now. And then from here, when I reload this page, we should see an image column, and I should be able to edit an existing image and add a file name. So this is going to be like the less flexible way of adding images. I'm just going to do it by way of a file name. So for Guitar Hero here, I can edit. And I'm going to say, I need a guitarhero.png. And that gets saved to that column. And we can see that over here. I now need an image, a Guitar Hero image to use. And luckily, I have some incredible paint skills. And so that is supposed to be a guitar. Sort of looks like a funny looking violin if you're very generous. But there's my Guitar Hero image. And so I've saved that to my desktop. And there is a place within every Rails application where you can put images. And it's the app assets images folder. And we typically put images in here that are just static, that are going to be used, say, in our layout, maybe in a header used by our CSS. This isn't where like uploaded images typically go to, and it's the least flexible way of working with images because you literally have to move the file yourself into this folder. So, to do that, I've saved that image somewhere to my desktop here. My desktop is really messy at the moment. Where are you, beautiful Guitar Hero image? Oh, there it is. So I'll copy and paste that in there. And now for it to be displayed on the front end of the website, sort of the user-facing end of the website, if you remember, I had built a user-facing end to this website, which just simply loaded up some of the properties of a board game. And so we have this new property, which is an image, so I need to have that displayed as well. And each one of these games was displayed by way of a view partial. So I can go to my app views folder into the board games and find that partial. And below the category, I can say something like, if the board game image is present, question mark. So we know because it's a question mark method that it's going to return, it's a predicate, it's going to return true or false. And here I can put a paragraph tag, and within there I can use an image tag helper to load up the board game image. And I don't have to worry about the pathing to that assets folder or anything along those lines because the image tag helper does that for me. And it makes use of what Rails calls the asset pipeline, which does all sorts of extra work for us, like sort of heavy caching of permanent assets, and it will, well, we can see it in action in a moment. So I can, what is it not like here? Oh, my close tag is not present there. Save that and head back over here and reload this. I've noticed I don't need to reload the Rails server when I just make view changes. It's controller and routing changes that seems to be what I need to reload. And there's my beautiful image on the game that had an image associated with it, and on the other game, nothing. If I didn't have that if statement, I would have got an exception because it would have tried to access an image where it was nil. So it would have tried to throw nil to the image tag, and that would have been a problem. So that's the really simple but not very flexible way of adding images. Likely what you'll want to do in your project is file uploads, and that is much more flexible, and so I will do that now as well. But before I do, I will quickly go into the admin and remove this data here so that there's no image. Okay. There are a number of gems that will allow us to add file uploads to a Rails project, and a few of them are known and supported by ActiveAdmin, which is nice. So ActiveAdmin will recognize the presence of these gems and go out of its way to sort of work with them. The one I use most often is Carrierwave. There's another named Paperclip that I've used in the past, but when Carrierwave came out, I sort of just switched over to it. And so that's what we'll be using today. In the currently sort of version of Edge Rails, so Edge Rails is sort of like the bleeding edge of Rails. Edge Rails right now is at 5.2. We're all using a 5.1 variant. In 5.2, Rails has actually added native support for file uploads using something called active storage. And so if you went to the Edge Rails guides, you would see active storage. And for anyone who wants to play around with that, I'm going to put extra marks on the project so that if you push your Rails up to 5.2 and make use of active storage, you'll get more marks. There's already marks for file uploads, but you'd get even more for using active storage. And I found a few pretty good tutorials on making use of active storage. So there's some sort of knowledge out there on how to make use of it. Okay, so what are the steps to using Carrierwave, which is what typically we've used in this course? Well, we need to add Carrierwave to our gem file. That's step 1. And so before we do that, I'll probably just save my changes to Git here. Added an image prop to board games, period. And now in my gem file, below where I added ActiveAdmin and devise, I can add Carrierwave as well. And then either RubyMine will pick up that I need to install that, or I might have to go to tools and do a bundler install to make sure that I have access to that gem. And then looking at the README, there's a few things I need to do. Like ActiveAdmin, Carrierwave adds a new generator to Rails. So I'm going to generate what's called an uploader, and then I'm going to mount that uploader inside of the model that I wish to have associated with the uploader. And so giving that a moment to do its thing. Tools, generator. The generator I want is the uploader generator. Tools, generator, uploader, and the uploader I'm going to call image. So I'm just naming it after the column, and that's the convention here, is to name it after the column that we added to our model. And so in their example, they have uploader and they've called it avatar, so you could think of them probably adding this to like a user model where they're adding an avatar for that user. We added image, so I'm going to do capital I image for my uploader. Click OK there. And then in the app uploaders folder, I get this file. And it has some pre-existing configuration in there, so we're defaulting to the storage being the file system. Carrierwave also supports cloud-based file storage, so you could have your images saved to Amazon S3 or other sort of cloud-based providers. The other thing that image uploader or that Carrierwave can do is automatic resizing of images. So you can upload a really large image and have it resized to multiple different images, a thumbnail, a medium size, a large, and you could use those. You could have them set to particular aspect ratios or particular widths or heights or whatnot. It's very, very configurable. And so I need to now mount this uploader inside of my model. So it's the board games model, and how we do that, and they explain a little bit later on here, is I just have a mount uploader command, mount uploader, and then the name of my column and the name of my uploader. And I can now restart my server. And now if I edit a board game or create a new board game from the back end, look at this, a little file picker. So ActiveAdmin has recognized the fact that Carrierwave is present, recognized the fact that the image column is set to mount an uploader. It's provided a file picker for me. I can choose the file that I wish to upload. So for example, that same Guitar Hero image, I can say update board game. Now the image, I just reused that same image string column. It now contains a file path. That file path uploads board games image, blah, blah, blah. That is not in the assets folder. That is in Rails's public folder. The public folder is where we can put things that are loaded up that circumvent Rails. So if you put something in the public folder and someone goes to a URL and it paths to a file in this public folder off of your root, then the Rails stack won't even sort of kick in. And so when you go to like /localhost:3000/some path, it'll first look for that path as if the root is public. If it finds that thing, it'll load it. If it doesn't, then it goes to the sort of Rails routing system. And so if in this uploads folder, we have a board games folder or board game folder, image 2, meaning that was the primary key of the board game that I associated with, and there's the image. If I go back to the front end, I don't know if it just works. Does it just work? It just works. If I had multiple sizes, I would have to do a little bit more work in that I would go to like .image, and then which size I wished to load up at this particular point in time. But there you go, file uploads, right? So now I could go and create a whole new board game. Create a new one. And I'll make the Winnipeg News board game. So I have a screenshot here that I can associate with it. And we'll see a little bit of a problem here because, at this point, I haven't done any resizing. And so we have this nice little Guitar Hero and this giant screenshot. And like the hacky fix to that is to go to the image tag and say, well, give me a width of 200 pixels for all images. And that, visually fixes the problem. But now if someone, say, with a mobile phone was loading this website, they would have to first download this giant image only to have it resized by their browser. Not a very efficient way of handling things. So the proper way, which I'm going to leave up to an exercise to you for your project, the proper way to handle this is, if we look in the uploader, it mentions a few commented out things here. Include RMagic or include Carrierwave, blah, blah, blah. There's a few different ways of handling it. All of them need some kind of command line image manipulation program installed on your virtual machine. So the typical way I do it is we're using a Debian-based or Ubuntu-based virtual machine. So I would use apt-get to install ImageMagick. ImageMagick is a command line image manipulation tool. Then I would install the MiniMagick gem in the gem file, and I would enable Carrierwave MiniMagick. And then there's a bunch of commented out things here for doing scaling or making different sizes, and the docs are really good. The other thing that Carrierwave does for us, which is really nice, if you think back to WebDev 2 when we did file uploads, we did things like checking file extensions and MIME types to make sure that the thing that the person was uploading was really an image. Carrierwave does that for us automatically. So it's already doing MIME type and file extension checking, and we can circumvent that, and we can give it a list of extensions that we specifically want to whitelist. Maybe you're not dealing with images. Maybe you're dealing with a PDF. So you would just set the whitelist just to PDF, and you could do MIME type whitelisting, all sorts of extra stuff. And the docs, as I said, are really, really strong. So that is image upload using Carrierwave. And as I said, there is now in Edge Rails active storage. I haven't had a chance to work with it yet, but it sounds really interesting. And just like Carrierwave, it also supports local file storage, but also Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud as a way to host your images. This becomes important if you want to host your application on Heroku. Heroku is a cloud service that allows you to easily host a Rails application. But one of the things that is a limitation with Heroku is that the file system is immutable. So once you load an application onto Heroku, you cannot permanently write to their file system. You can temporarily write to the file system, and you could write images to it, but it can be flushed away at any time. So if you want to get the marks associated with Heroku uploads and still have your whole website work, including image uploads, you're going to have to configure some kind of cloud service for hosting these images. And as I said, that can be done with Carrierwave, but it looks like it can also be done using Active Storage. And that's all I got for you for uploads.